forward.
We got time.
I heard about a startup
We can't.
using
It also
ashes
is
bodies.
Let's make
Yes.
yeah.
And the idea, I haven't seen it, Dan Graham has. He said that, you look at it. Of course, the experts.
Yeah.
The ring, we'll see it, but it makes you just think about balance. Commodity, like machine, starts making diamonds.
I'm actually
Kids, yeah.
I'm interested from an industrial standpoint. Start using it for like mining and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like coming from Houston, that's all they talk about oil and gas was we can start creating diamonds and embedding them in our drill bits. We can fashion very complex shapes, for very unique drill bits and stuff like that.
Seems better.
Yeah.
10,000. I didn't know, like, millennials aren't. Anyway. Thanks, Craig. Chris.
People complain about like one of my
have a big show down there every year, and every time I'm like, oh my god.
I didn't understand what you meant when you said he was doing it. So I said, how does do this?
Like shit.
I will live here.
I'm in Texas.
I will live here. He had the bid, they said, I'll be there, and I thought, okay.
my interns came, he's from St. Paul, Minnesota. So he came here last summer and he was dying. And I was like, this isn't even as bad as Houston. I was like, how can it
It'd be worse. Yes, things are. It could be much worse. You would have some serious humidity.
Yeah, we were at Airbnb and AC went out for a night. And so I could not take it. I was like, well, honestly, it's still like, 80 degrees, 80 something degrees at night, but like, it's not humid, so like, it just doesn't feel that bad.
Throw yourself down and huff and puff. Run out.
Just the humidity there.
So,
Yeah, that's
oh yeah.
It does not allow us to. Yeah, I mean, the water doesn't show anymore. I was actually, so I technically live in Katy.
Okay.
I live in Katy, so not really in Houston, but it's a part of Houston. And so that was actually part of
On the flip side, if you're like as helpful as you can be, exactly what you're trying to.
I'm just right at the end of it.
I was at your
Water just, I
session.
know where it's fills out detention ponds, every
I
time it
didn't see
rains,
the demo,
people are
I didn't see
at.
the demo, but it was.
We have floods during.
Did you guys try that?
So I got lucky, I was in the apartment on the second floor, and my parents, basically, like, everybody around them got flooded, but they were crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I had friends that lived there a long time, and they flooded, never flooded. It was just that much water, that quick. It's just waiting for it to get up to sea level, drone bay,
And the people who tennis shots that did the policy.
Probably not something that.
I mean, I would say it's all that.
Let me check in and see who's here.
Completely, just the first floor was gone, or.
Oh, there we go. Hey, Craig.
I was riding around with 8 days.
It's called, you mind if I told take it?
Yeah. Afterwards, because that was the tough thing also, it was probably 3 days after what we thought was the worst, that's when they opened. Everybody thought they were clear like 3 days, 4, and then all of a sudden all the water's like.
I'll be back there in the middle of March. Well,
Old field is not only field.
so he's lucky to be with her.
River was way over there, right? And it was all water. It was
Greg
like,
had like the second
all
president.
that's coming in.
Oh,
We got all that rain, you know, like it used to be.
First was either you and Pat,
And then
Paul
it just
Harrison,
kept, so
Paul
it
Harrison,
wasn't
kind of
just
back
y'all's
and
rain,
forth.
it's
Doesn't
everybody
matter.
north.
The point is,
So that's what I'm saying, like, so to your point,
point is,
water
after
fell
this,
that's big enough problem,
after
but
this,
you have all the rain.
I know.
Boston on down.
It was a better metal.
It was intense. Yeah, like George Park was just completely flooded.
Alright, and then how do I go to the next slide? Meeting manifesto.
Go time already?
Yeah.
I always laugh when you guys look at the audience, I get done with this.
Actually, I think the last time I was in here was when we were still reading.
No, she's bored, she's bored, she's bored. Wait, do you say you really do have no one right back here?
We do.
Yeah, there really is
Oh my
I
a
thought you put
couple
it
right
there.
there. Marianne.
Look at that.
I put that other.
That is with a smile,
Sorry.
with a smile. Am I supposed to put it in a cup?
I don't think so.
I'm not putting it in a cup.
Although we are potentially being videoed.
Oh, are we really?
How are we gonna do it?
You start, we'll go back and forth. What time is this in, 5:30?
So, I wanna quickly get to the Ride Scout story. Thanks everybody for making time coming out. But as part of the ambassadors for Capital Factory, we are, you know, I think some of you may or may not be familiar with the Texas Startup Manifesto. And if you're aware of this or not aware of this. All right, well, I mean, at the end of the day, Capital Factory is growing and trying to pull together the entire Central Texas ecosystem. So Capital Factory has extended its footprint into Dallas at the Dallas Entrepreneur Center, is expanding into Houston, and we're continuing to sort of tighten up our relationship with San Antonio.
Can I add some color commentary?
Of course.
8% of the US population lives inside that triangle of the Texas Manifesto. Let me just try to wrap your brain around that. That's nearly 1 in every 10 Americans live inside that triangle. And then you have the whole rest of the United States. That's kind of the way I view the United States. There's that triangle, and then there's the rest of the United
That's
States.
awesome.
Anyway, color commentary. Please
Well,
proceed.
look, Joseph just finished an amazing run for Congress, as many of you know, moving the needle from a 20
20 points.
point X delta in the last election to less than 3% in this election. So, Herculean effort. And his brain has got so many of these quotes, so, and these statistics and facts, so keep serving them up, brother.
There you go.
Anyway, so now Capital Factory is trying to pull, you know, Central Texas together, 1/8 of the population together. And so know that as you have resources here in Austin, you also have resources elsewhere. If you're ever on a trip to these other cities, you have a landing pad, a Lily in each of those cities. And I think Josh took a bus today to
Yeah, he's in
Dallas. And so Capital Factory takes a trip every month to one of the nodes to spend the day there, and they load up a bus and you can join.
Can I tell a super micro quick story about what advantage you all have with the Texas Manifesto that we didn't have when we were building Ride Scout? We went to Houston to pitch a startup event there, and I don't even think the organization exists anymore. But when the night was over, the host was kind enough to say, well, where are you staying tonight? I'm like, well, we're on startup pay, which is 0. So I haven't really figured that out yet. And he says, come back to my apartment. I'm having some friends over. It'll be great. Well, I had just finished going from the East Coast to DC to pitch, the West Coast to Houston, San Francisco for a fundraiser, with a meeting with donors, and then to the Gulf Coast. So 3 coasts, 24 hours. By the time I got to Houston, all I want to do is go to bed. And he's like, come over to our apartment. And so I went to his apartment. It was like 11:30 by the time we got there. And he's like, oh, one problem. the air conditioner's broken. So he raises this window in his apartment. And I remember being there. The apartment complex looked like that 90210 or whatever back in the day, the television show with the middle courtyard area. I heard every dog, every clink, every clank, every open door, and all the people had to go to work in the morning, which I didn't because I was trying to sleep off, staying up late. So needless to say, the Texas Manifesto is so much better now than you having to stay in an apartment with no air conditioning on your buddy's couch in Houston. So good on you for
There
that.
you go.
Anyway,
Anyway, I love that there's such a great, I moved here, we'll get to this, I don't know, 3.5 years ago, kind of 4.5 years ago, and from the Washington DC metro area where we actually had more of our Ride Scout team at the time. And there is such a great sense of community here in Austin. Everybody sort of points towards Austin. Whereas in DC, I grew up in Northern Virginia, there's Maryland and DC, Maryland and Virginia who both look down their noses at each other. And then there's like North Arlington, South Arlington, you know, Alexandria, Arlington, Chevy Chase, you know, all these pockets. Here everybody points towards Austin. So what I like about this manifesto is it's now we all point to Texas.
Yep.
Even more so in an identity around innovation in Texas. So, all right, there you go. There's your 5-minute commercial on
well, we have another commercial.
this is the second commercial. Well, I think a lot of you are tracking we're getting to acronym, we're entering the acronym phase.
Yeah.
CDI, Center for Defense Innovation. At one point, it was discussed as Defense Innovation Center. That acronym was
Not a good
not gonna
acronym.
work.
Yeah.
So anyway, we got back to Center for Defense
He
Innovation.
stopped typing long enough to do that acronym.
So anyway, you know this is massive. What's happening here with Army Futures Command, and I know a lot of you in this room already know this, some more than others. What this means, a brand new 4-star command in Austin, and you know Joseph was here, circa when you first got here at UT.
8 years ago.
8 years ago, and Joseph's like, Austin ought to be this place for defense innovation and energy, and doing his thing, right? The Joseph thing. And he really did get into Josh's brain, and Joseph started a
Defense Energy Summit.
Defense Energy Summit. We'll get time to talk about that. Anyway, and so what ended up happening, and I'm the Director of Military and Veteran Affairs for the Capital Factory. So Josh asked me to help him like speak Army a few years ago. So every couple months, someone would come in from the Army or DHS or NGA or the Air Force, and I would host, or Joseph and I would host, and then all of a sudden it was every month, and then it was like every 3 weeks, every 2 weeks, every week, and then you know all this momentum building around this idea of having defense innovators here at the Capital Factory, which the culmination was obviously Army Futures Command selecting Austin and Capital Factory. And so Joseph and I were part of that, you know, part of the hosting and facilitating, but we give incredible credit to Josh Baer, founder and CEO of the Capital Factory, because he just gets you so fired up. And he got those generals and those senior government officials. He's like, this is where you need to be, plus all the energy from all of you around here. And away we go. They selected Austin, and they moved into the 8th floor last Thursday. Big ceremony. So it's kind of open, kind of not yet, but you're going to see a lot more of what you're seeing now, which is, you know, a whole room full of uniform across the hallway here. So we're excited to be part of that, because Joseph and I, for us, it's a little bit of going home to have the Army come into our home now.
Color commentary. So let me just try to explain for those of you that didn't grow up in the Army like we did, or even be around the military, to know how huge this is that we're building. I like to do things in terms of decades, because it's always kind of cool to compare time changes between like when your grandparents were born and when your parents were born and when you were born. So just kind of put this in perspective. From the end of World War II, which is, let's just call it 1945, within the next 10 years, we had already gotten into another war, which was Korea. It didn't last very long, thankfully, but it was a real war. Then, at the end of that, we started to kind of play footsies in Southeast Asia that then became another war, Vietnam, by the time we got to 1965. So in a 20-year time frame, warfare went from the World War II scenes that you've seen to the unbelievable challenges of Korea, to the completely different kind of warfare that was Vietnam. And then at the end of Vietnam, so 1975, so it's 30 years since World War II, the Army said, okay, that's it. Warfare is different than everything we learned in our textbooks. We have to transform the entire 1.2 million, back then it was nearly 3 million person organization. We have to retool it all. How we think, how we strategize, how we 18 plus years that we, or 17 plus years we've been in the Middle East specifically, but don't forget Desert Storm before that. Don't forget all the incursions since. Don't forget cybersecurity. In other words, the Army went, whoop, time out again. Took 30 years last time, this time it took 40 years. Now the Army said, warfare will never be the same as what we taught before. So we've got to find a sector, high tech, low tech. We got to have everybody co-located in one spot to figure out how to build the Army of the next 30, 40 years. And they chose Texas. They chose Central Texas. They chose this Iron Triangle, this startup manifesto. That name correct?
Correct.
Correct. They chose this region of the country because what's happening here in Texas right now is going to have an impact on how the Army thinks about the Army of the 21st century, or at least the next 30 or 40 years. So that is how big this is. It is something of a generational event that rarely ever happens. And the fact that it's happening in our backyard and you all can walk out this door and within a couple of steps be involved with those people. And by the way, not having to pass through security. You don't have to have a badge. You don't have to have top secret clearance. You can meet those people in real time right now. We're trying to think about how to protect this country going forward the next 30, 40 years. That's how big this Army Futures Command is. And I use every color commentary moment to make sure people know just how big it is. It's huge.
Boom.
So, boom.
There you go.
Mic drop.
CDI.
All right, CDI.
All right, this is a little bit of the rhythm of Capital Factory in terms of, you know, how we try to connect with entrepreneurs and on-ramp all of you into the ecosystem. This is available online, but just, I like the predictability that Capital Factory's really done a good job of establishing what we would call in the Army a battle rhythm around what they do. All right, so here we go with the
Handsome guy.
founder story.
You're looking
Yeah,
good. You're looking good.
thanks.
See?
Right there. I like that picture of you too.
Well, I don't have a beard anymore. So,
Yeah,
shave the beard.
there's a time and place.
Yeah.
It'll come back.
Yeah.
So I actually have a photo.
Yeah.
You know, this is where it all started, right? Right here. Oh.
Oh, you do have it. That's good.
Oh, wow.
Go to green.
I did.
Yep, there you go. Boom.
Yeah.
Now, the crazy
So
part is
that-
you have to guess who's who. I mean, we circled it, but that's still not good enough.
That's where the founder story started. And Joseph and I were classmates at West Point. In fact, we were class of '93.
Yep.
I feel a little bit old in this room. And we started West Point in 1989, and we worked together. We're friends at West Point, worked together. This was a group of cadets who did admissions work for West Point, so we were sort of ambassadors of West Point. We'd go out to high schools and talk to kids about the potential of coming to West Point. So
Can I add a little color commentary? I'm
all
gonna,
night long.
I'm gonna stop asking you if I
All
can add
night
color. I'm just
long.
gonna try to insert during a brief pause. So one of the things that you'll learn, and David and I, and by the way, David Olive, if you haven't met David Olive, meet David Olive. He's one of the first investors ever in Ride Scout.
Yep.
So he is literally invested in this conversation. Actually, well, we paid him back, so that's good.
And the political campaign.
And the political campaign. All right, very good. But we were just discussing before this the power of karma and what it means as an entrepreneur. And it'll have many other versions or lifestyles or cyclical blah, blah, blah. But here's a really easy way to look at how karma impacts it, and this photo takes it. When Craig and I met in 1989, we were in the Army here and there going back and forth. But I was at, see the guy above my head, I'm the top guy in the red circle, that's Jason Dempsey. He was also at the time living in North Arlington. I was on my way to leave the Pentagon where I was working, thinking about building Ride Scout and traffic and congestion, and move here to Austin. And it was on Jason Dempsey's back porch, 20 plus years later, that I was just talking amongst friends about how I thought we could organize all the world's transportation and reduce commute times, reduce congestion, improve quality of life. And this guy, always looking for a deal, always looking for a good opportunity, goes, what? And he literally put his hand on my shoulder, kind of turned me around and goes, what did you just say? Wow. And I said to them, well, I got this idea about, transportation and mobility and opportunity, and it literally started on Jason Dempsey's.
Well, I would back it up a little bit.
Go ahead.
Because I had served 17 years in the Army. Joseph ended up doing 20, right? So I left. For those, any veterans in the room? No? Okay, well, if you do 20 years, you get the whole pension, right?
Retirement.
So I leave in my
benefits.
17th year, people think I'm nuts, right? Because why did my mother, my father, my brothers, what are you doing? Don't leave. And I just decided it was time to become an entrepreneur. So I started a company in DC that Joseph actually was very helpful in making that successful when he was in uniform. But anyway, I started this entrepreneurial journey. Joseph is now working for senior leadership, chief of staff of the Army CEO in DC. And I'm like, I can't wait for you to work with you because you have the DNA of an entrepreneur. And Joseph, and I think obviously he heard about entrepreneurship, but it got in his brain, and Joseph does what he does, where he goes deep. He starts reading book after book after book on entrepreneurship, and he's like, this really resonates with me. And then, so Joseph always sees a problem, wants to apply a solution. And then we have this moment, so I'm like, Joseph, let's do something about this. So pull him out of this patio, and I say, here's what we're gonna do. Because he's getting ready to move to Texas, to UT. I said, I'm gonna put $5,000
$5,000
into a joint account. Well, so we
but
started.
let's pause. If you don't think that's a lot of money, get out of this room and leave. That's a huge amount of money for an idea that didn't even exist other than on paper and on a PowerPoint. So please continue.
So I said, look, he just couldn't stop talking about this idea. I said, we opened up a joint banking account in USAA.
Thank you, USAA.
As good military members often do. And I said, go to Texas and start to tease out this idea. Joseph moves down here, becomes the professor of military science at UT. So he's running Army ROTC at UT.
By day.
And then at night,
He's Batman. No, sorry.
it's like speakeasy,
Driscoll Hotel. AT&T
Driscoll,
Executive Center.
yeah, like beer.
This is out of our joint account.
Yeah, right.
This is out of our joint account.
And then it was like iPad, beer.
You gotta have technology.
But this was the plan. I will say the plan was to meet people for beer or coffee. Couldn't do coffee really because he was still at a full-time job. So beer, and it was always this brand, by the way.
No.
This is Joseph. Remained true to this brand for as long as I've known him. And anyway, he teased out this idea. He said, hey, people like this idea. I think we should do something about it. At the time, it was called Going My Way. We ended up adjusting.
Should we tell people what it is? Just real quick.
Yeah,
What
you
basically
probably want to know what the company is.
What
at
I
this
wanted
point.
to do was make it so that if you're going from point A to point B, you would see all the ride options, not just public transit and car share and bike share. Today it would have scooters if it existed. But you would also want to see who among your friends was also going my way. So you could have instant ride share. A lot of things that 8-10 years ago people said was crazy. I'll never forget. I was at I won't say the name of the investment group here in town, and I was pitching this idea, and this woman, very like any man or woman in the past, but this woman stood up very proud and said, "Young man, this idea of going my way is the dumbest idea I've ever heard of. No one will ever get in a car with a perfect stranger in their personally owned automobile. Never gonna happen." And I said, "Ma'am, I think the technology will permit it." And she said, "Nope, never gonna happen." So we did not get investment from that group that day, but I think that history favors the bold. So that's what we were building at the time. and so on and so forth. But anyway,
Well,
keep
then,
going.
then Joseph said, I think this idea has some legs. Take it to the next step. Gonna need a little bit of money, so I wire, I don't know, at this point, like 25K, no
Yes.
doubt. And so Joseph starts to build the prototype, and he, you know, sort of, what the language that we used, Joseph used, was the pickup teams in terms of software developers. Found someone to build a 1.0 version of this app. And it was so bad that when we would go to fundraise, I'm like, make sure there's like at least 6 feet between
And he wanted me to
a
always
live
continue to move
person
my
and
hand.
the app.
So here's what
I'm
it
like-
does.
Right.
Here's what it does. Yeah, but here's the cool part. Today, they can build interactive mock-ups with commercially available off-the-shelf
Yeah, right.
technologies that were better than what we were building with real coding.
Code, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So anyway,
Anyway, but the journey began, and we started the fundraise. Now, I had been out and had some early success again with a footnote of big thanks to Joseph. And so I was sort of like the business guy, and Joseph was this force of nature, which he continues to be to this day. And so, time to fundraise. Now, we initially started fundraising, and I called, who is now my business partner in Moonshots, Kelly Purdue. Kelly's a West Point grad. Kelly won season 2 of The Apprentice. If you ever watched that show back in the day, he's in Los Angeles. And we called him, we said, how do we, because we didn't really know startup, how do we value this thing? He's like, I don't know, I think we got $7 million pre-money. And this is before like angel investing was a thing. Nowadays, we would never in a million years get that sort of like
yeah.
price
And
point.
it'd
So
be
that
up
was
to
good.
safe.
Now,
It'd be
now
done.
you got a better deal in the back, David, so we'll talk about that later. Anyway, so we went out fundraising, and as you can tell, just in this early discussion in the room, all I had to do was just open the door for Brother Joseph. Then I could like light a cigar, go to the back of the room, drink some scotch. Joseph does his thing, boom, 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 and then I collect up all the checks when everybody's got the Joseph buzz on, which is kind of what I just did through the campaign. But anyway,
It's true. That's
it's
true.
true. Anyway, so we got a little bit of money, right? A couple $100,000,
Well, it
and then we
started after South
South-
by.
yeah.
Remember?
South by
2012.
2012, right?
2012.
And that was I think that was that Hatch that we won?
Yes,
That
Hatch Pitch out of Houston. Little plug for them. They're going to be here at
Yeah.
South by. They've got an event. Make sure you go see them. But whatever the pitch competition that they're in, just get there. Go to every pitch competition that will take you. There's a new organization called Pitch a Kid. You guys heard of this yet? I love it. I love it. A buddy of mine started it. Pitch a Kid. So instead of pitching a bunch of investors, you're literally pitching your business plan to a bunch of 8 and 12-year-olds. Yeah.
Good idea.
And the point is, if you can convince them, and it makes sense to them, you can convince 9 out of 10 investors that it's a good idea too. It's such a phenomenal
That's cool.
idea. But more importantly, the value in pitching is not so much even the exposure or the awards. What you get out of pitching your concept is to get in front of an audience that doesn't know you, get in front of an audience that will question everything about your business plan, and then thirdly, not to be discounted, is you improve your public speaking skills, because one of the things that I put a whole lot of value in the success of our company was the fact that we were a great team. He would be able to talk to investors using investor talk speak, which I never really got good at. Then I was there to pick up the ball whenever it was necessary to talk about the vision and why it's an important idea to organize all the world's transportation. But if you do it enough, you learn to pick up on each other's tells or their habits. And my favorite was, remember the Transamerica? Sorry, I'm laughing before I tell a story. The Transamerica building in San Francisco. We go to meet this guy that was the epitome of whatever your stereotype of a harsh German investor might be. Like his questions were quick and just short. Yeah, he was busy. And it was like, ah. And we got there and he goes, go. And No kidding. Like, we could not get the right cord for the computer to do the stuff. And so, whatever, it was all happening in real time. So, in a conversational style, I just started the pitch. We knew it so well that we just made it a conversation that before we knew it, we had given him the whole pitch before we could finally get it up on the screen. And that is what going to as many pitch competitions or investors as you can get is you get better at your trade. And that just helps you later on. But he did not invest, correct?
No,
He did not invest. But after that, we made a joke between the two of us that if anything ever went wrong, Craig would just kind of look at me, and if necessary, throw a phone book in front of me, and I could just read from the phone book and pitch our company. You have to have a passion for what you're doing, so much so that you know it inside and out. You don't ever need to look at a slide to know what's on your heart and what you're trying to do, and that sells. I mean, that really breaks through more than anything you could put up in terms of numbers or total addressable market or all the other investor talk that Craig is so very good at. So.
Well, when I think about it, just sitting here and reflecting, and I think about that hatch pitch, and Joseph, as always, crushes the pitch, right? He does an amazing job on the pitch. But there were like all these like top tier startups because you had to get, it was a down select from probably 100 companies down to like a dozen at the time. And we had Kelly Purdue, as I mentioned earlier, now my business partner, on our slide as an advisor. And it turned out one of the judges was good friends with Kelly Purdue. And the event was, the way that the format is everybody basically got like $1 million each judge, and then they deployed it across the startups, how would they invested. And who knows? I mean, like, I have these theories, like, and this is how your life comes down to these like unbelievable moments, like these single, and I have my own, and Joseph has his own, of like how my life would be different 30 seconds later if Kelly hadn't been on that slide, had that affinity to show, like, and this is a point on Founding, I'm telling this to the advisor to shore us up because Kelly had been out a while, had been a successful investor, and so you shore yourself up with that advisory board, and it just happened that there was that chemistry there, and we came in second place.
Yep.
In that second place, at the time, because we had raised some money, a few $100,000, and we kind of plateaued, and then we got the South by Southwest
I thought
validation.
that was our first. That's what we used to take to DC that got us that next tranche. It was all your money before that. It was all your money.
Well,
before
maybe you're
that.
right. Maybe
Yeah.
they're right. Maybe that was, yeah. But that was the juice.
Yeah.
That was the rocket fuel. That award, second place in Hatch, which, you know, for people insiders of South by, they'd be like, all right, that's, you know, good job. But we were like, we just won the fucking Super Bowl, right? You know what I mean? Like, that's pretty much the way we message it, and that allowed us to raise more money and
Yeah.
really get the company.
So for you, at whatever stage you are in your startup or your company, or if you're an angel investor, it's always important to remember there's so much white noise out there. The intended audience, your investors that you're going after, they see so many pitch decks. There's just so much discussion and noise that you need to find a way to break through. And for us, having Kelly on that slide deck, I mean, those judges saw 20 ideas. They were all great, well-intended, but that gave us a little extra bump. And then the presentation went well because Craig and I, we worked on it. We rehearsed it over and over again, and to the point where we felt good about the presentation. But then after that, we took that validation, that outside validation, that South by had a pitch competition, and we came in second at that particular pitch. Now, there are now dozens of pitch competitions at South by. It wasn't so much the same 7 years ago, but
Yeah.
it's still great. You still need to get up on stage, and more importantly, it just helps with your pitch, period. Be able to tell your story.
So I think it was the next year, fast forwarding a year, we're back at South by.
Mm-hmm.
We have a little bit of a team here. We have an Army officer, someone David Olive knows, Steve Carroll,
Yeah.
who's now volunteering his time. We have an MVP of the product.
The one I had to go like this.
Yeah.
Actually, that's not true. This
had
one was
tightened-
real.
This one was real,
This
and
one
we
was real.
had.
We had,
And so remember, we're finding rides, best way to get from A to B on the ground, and we had public transit integrated. We had
during South by. So we
Yeah.
made an app that was specific for
Yeah.
integrating South by as transportation or lack of transportation. Yeah.
right.
Minivans.
Oh man.
And so here's the deal. Look, whatever you're doing with your company, you're gonna make so many mistakes, but the worst mistake that you can make is to not try or is to not go forward. And certainly the worst mistake is not put yourself out there at risk. I mean, that year,
Yeah,
that
we
South by was so crazy. We literally took Jared Reinhardt. So Jared, I hope you're watching, a former student of mine. We had to just break through the noise. We had to create some kind of guerrilla marketing that would attract attention. And so our good friend John was on the phone talking to Craig, in which he was basically saying that what else, how can you relate Ride Scout? This idea of getting around on the ground, about finding your best way, what resonates?
I think it wasn't my mom though.
Yes.
Okay, you're going.
It was,
all right, yeah.
it was his buddy John, our friend John, talking to his mother because, small world again, he happened to be renting an apartment from Craig's mother. He can never make that up, like not planned at all. And they're like, well, they're at South by pitching this idea. And Craig's mom says, well, you know what else kind of gets around on the ground? It's like a flightless bird, like a penguin. And I saw this special about how the penguins are being threatened by a changing planet with rising tides and less ice, and we should do it for the penguins. Literally in the middle of South by, we changed what we were doing on the idea of this penguin, and we ran down to Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, and we got a giant penguin suit, put Jarrett Reinhardt in. Oh, but you talk about traction and attention. That penguin was just enough to not only get some extra attention, which by the way, in terms of moving the needle, did nothing.
Yeah.
But for morale, was fabulous. Fabulous. But on top of that, here's what I didn't know at the time. Future investors and future partners who saw me and Craig and Steve Carroll and Kate and Ryan Black saw us working so hard. I mean, at one point I dressed in a banana suit. We went over to East 6th. There was some big South by party on, do you remember that? I dressed up in a banana suit, got my wife's permission to take my middle school and teenage daughters with me. So we had 4 bananas out on out on East 6th at some South by engagement late one night on a Friday or Saturday night. But what I didn't know was that I thought the audience was people to download our app. I thought the audience was people who would use Ride Scout and discover new ways. But instead, the audience was the people, the investors, the community, the influencers who saw the two of us and our team working our ass off for this idea. And that hard work is what communicated through to them and their residents, because your investors, more times than not, do not invest in companies, they invest in people.
So, right, and I remember, so in the same South by, so we ended up putting pedicabs on the app, which was crazy, because we were going one by one to pedicabs and like trying to sign them up to put their pedicab on the app. I think that worked all of 0 times.
Wait,
That's
no. Don't you
there may
remember
be
the reason
one.
why? The guy from U-Ship. You don't remember that?
Well, I mean, we were calling in, we're trying to sign them up.
Oh, it
and
was
then have
terrible.
them show up on the app. It was
terrible.
It was a logistic.
But we finally got a few people connected. So Karma being what it is, we got connected, reconnected recently with the new, is he CEO of U-Ship? COO?
I don't think, yeah.
Anyway, U-Ship has new leadership, or at least part of it.
Yeah.
And one of the guys was a guy who used to live outside of Texas, was in for South by, and remembers distinctly me hustling, literally street hustling with a pedicab guy saying, where would you like to go? I'm paying for it. And then he'd get in the pedicab, people would get in the pedicab, and I'd have wait for it, a 5-minute pitch of what we were doing to take them where they were going. So it cost us, 10, 20 bucks, whatever it was, depending on how far they went. And while some hardworking pedicab entrepreneurs in the front, I'm in the pedicab with them going, let me tell you about Ride Scout and what we're building and this idea. So,
Well,
anyway.
that scrappiness, I remember it's another one. It's almost like that Hatch Pitch Kelly story. We were going person by person in line that was lined up going to like a concert down here. I think it was like on 4th Street, and we happened to pitch somebody who then was a out-of-town reporter, I think from New York City, who then wrote an article like the 10 companies that I saw
to watch
at South by, and we were the #1 company.
Yeah.
And it was completely kind of just random. We just like were scrapping it out, and it just happened that we hit somebody who wrote this article. So then guess what? We take that, we're like, we want another Super Bowl.
Bam! 2013.
And then we went out, we raised more money. So I got to let me check time so we keep this moving as to where we go. Well, so we eventually.
What time is it?
It's 5:08.
Oh, good. That clock is like broken or something.
We eventually sort of
Yeah.
plateau a little bit in cash flow.
Summer of
13, right?
summer of 13, we were just all prototyping. There wasn't much going on. There was no real
yeah, we
public
started the
release.
company in 11.
Right.
So now it's 2 summers later, and I help convince Joseph's bride, Amy, married 20 plus years. He's got to get out of the Army so we can do this for real.
Yeah.
So Joseph gets out of the Army.
I dropped my paperwork. It takes 1 year to get out of the Army.
Yeah.
So I dropped my paperwork a year in
About
advance.
roughly June 1st of 2013.
2012.
2013.
No, I dropped it in 2012.
Yeah,
Took a year to get out.
Oh yeah, but you get out
Yeah.
June 1st, 2013, and
Can I pick it up from here? So literally, I've promised my wife after 20 years of being in the Army, government paycheck, I don't care who you are, you're not joining the military to get rich, you're doing it to serve your country. Oh, by the way, if you add on top of it, a family of 5, 1 paycheck, you're not living the lifestyles of the rich and famous. However, Amy knew, my wife knew that with hard work and perseverance that after the Army, things might work out. I would get out of the Army, get a desk job, work in a cubicle, have a badge, scan in, scan out, and like build on all the political or the social and human capital skills I've learned, and we'd ride into the sunset. Well, Craig spends a year going, you know, Amy, this idea that we're building, it could be something. And Amy's like, if it comes with a paycheck, fine, but I'm getting ready to put 3 girls into college, we got a mortgage, we got credit card debt out of the roof, so figure out a way. So sure enough, we figure out a way to get it all done. I leave the Army, May 17th, 2013 was my retirement ceremony. That was a Friday afternoon. Saturday, Sunday, had a nice retirement party at the house, everything's good. Monday morning, I'm at our offices for Ride Scout. Within a month, we're out of money. Out of money.
no.
We had a donor.
No, we had like $740.
So yeah, $769. $769. We had 4 people on the payroll. We had 700 because we had these investors that we just knew were going to save the day.
We went. So this is where we had to have a down round, which some of you are familiar with.
Yeah.
And this one investor like basically said, we're coming in, here's the price point, and then they didn't come in.
And then didn't come in.
Now I'm the guy who does that as a VC. Anyway, didn't come in, and then we had another group in which David was a member that eventually came in.
Yeah.
They were sort of part of this process, but
Yeah, one of our teammates.
Yeah.
One of our teammates called me the full week before July 4th, so this would be about a month after I'd left the Army. We were down to like fumes and cash. We're waiting on these investors. We just need it. It's going to be a big thing. And she came in and she said, my lease is up. Can you guarantee me that I'm going to have money to pay my lease? And I said, I can't. Like, I don't even know if I'm going to have, nobody knows. Nobody knows anything. But do me this favor. We're coming up on the July 4th weekend. You're going away anyway. Take your time off. We'll all take time off. We'll continue to work on this investor, and we'll hopefully get it done. Can you give me 10 days? And she said, well, actually, I told the team an email last night that I'm leaving. I'm like, well, let me help you pack your bags, and off you go. Not in a bad way. I'm not blaming her. I just simply, I wasn't going to spend any emotional capital to try to convince her to unchange because it wasn't worth it. She had to do what she needed to do, which is as an entrepreneur, you're going to be faced with those difficult conversations, and you have to do what you need to do. And among all things, she needed to protect her economic security. I couldn't blame her. She had an offer in Seattle, and she moved off to Seattle. So
then we ended up calling a friend who was ready to invest, and he said, I'm in for $50K. He said, when do you need it? I'm like, today?
Three days
today?
ago?
Can you order it today?
He's like, I'm on vacation.
No.
I'm at the beach. And we're like, is there an ATM nearby? Can we send you the link for it?
Yeah. Well, then we had another event in DC we held We invited some warm prospects, fellow military academy graduates.
Yeah,
some
the point
others.
there is go to your strengths.
Yeah, exactly.
Whatever your network is, keep going back to your network. Ours happened to be the military.
And then we got a bunch of money came in, a bunch of new partnerships came in. And at that point, we started to you know, we took off. The business started
was
to take
cool.
off. Now, it was still not a revenue generating business, which we were back in the day where revenue, you could delay revenue, and it was all about users. And so we definitely
Oh, and back
ran
then,
that gauntlet.
back then it was 1 million users. Which
Yeah.
today, if you're not hitting 1 billion, they won't even talk to you or meet you for a meeting. But even as recent as 8 years ago, it was 1 million people. If you get close, so we were well on our way. In fact, we launched in Washington, D.C. in November of 2013. No offense to my beloved Austin, but then especially, not so much even now, but then especially, we didn't have the transportation infrastructure to really launch our company. But Washington, D.C. did. And they had a great government, city government that was receptive to us. They rolled out the red carpet. I mean, the Department of Transportation came to the meeting. Even the mayor, I forgot the mayor.
Yeah.
The mayor came to our launch of our app that night, and he gave a huge speech, and like we were like whoop whoop, and made a lot of great national press with that. And then it was just one city after another. And it was in January. I spoke at the what was it? ITSA? It was the International Transportation.
Very wonky, very
it-
wonky.
Something. It was.
Yeah.
Man, I hope they're not watching this video right now. But it was ITSA, the International Technology and Transportation Association. These are all the people involved in transportation. All of them. From making tires to vans to spare parts to trains to automobiles. This is everybody. They all get together. They happen to be in DC, and they invited us because, again, back to karma, the director hosted a panel once in San Antonio, saw us speak, and kind of thought, that guy's a little bit excited, let's bring him in. So we were at the Army-Navy Club, never forget it, by, again, coincidence, has nothing to do with the military, it's just a hotel in DC. So I give this presentation to the executive board of this organization. When it was done, complete silence. I was like, oh, I just landed a goose egg. This is like the worst presentation ever. Because normally after a presentation, you got hands up, you got questioners, you got this. And it was so silent, awkward. I mean, it was just like, so I looked at the executive director that invited me in. I'm like, he's like, so he asked a pretend question. He threw me a softball, and I answered it. And I'm like, burp, 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 burp. And then stone face, the rest of the crowd. I'm like, are you kidding me? So I left or whatever, and it kind of broke after we were done with our session, and it was happy hour, and then it was dinner, and I was sitting, you know, at one of the tables. But during the happy hour, I got out by the bar, and of course I needed a beer after that flop. And I said to the director, I said, man, I really apologize. I've never had a presentation that after I was done, there was utter silence. And he goes, oh, that wasn't a bad thing. And I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, you just scared the shit out of 50 CEOs in transportation across the country because they just realized that not necessarily you, but what you represent is a disruption to transportation, the likes of which some of them may never recover from. And I was like, oh, and it turns out to be true. Our future investor list of people we pitched our idea to is riddled with companies that are dead, or dying, or gone today because those business models did not survive the transportation innovation that came through technology that Craig was smart enough to invest in years ago. So that's my little story.
Well, let's do a wrap in 3 so we can open up to a few questions, because I have a hard stop at 5:30. I think
Yeah.
you do. I got a wheel.
Yep.
But anyway, so the point about when we initially launched the company, I guess a learning point I would say is that we were at 1776 in DC, which at the time was like Capital Factory of DC. It was like the go-to place for tech / accelerator / incubator in DC. And it made such a difference in the trajectory of our company because, you know, we literally said that they amplified us. Everybody who came in to visit, to include the president, President Obama, came, and guess who they always saw Ride Scout. So I encourage that's what Capital Factory can do as well, especially as all these visitors are going around.
Let me build on that. Before Steve Jobs passed away, he had an instrumental hand in the development of the new Apple headquarters, which I must say, until that thing opened. The largest collection of Apple employees was here in Austin, Texas. Is that a shameless plug? Is that okay? But
Do it.
what Steve Jobs wanted in his new headquarters was design the hallways, the bathrooms, the water coolers, and the eating areas such that there would be incidental contact. He wanted people of all different departments and divisions to physically, literally be in close proximity in an that's keyword, unscheduled way. Because in most meetings, there's not enough crosstalk. But you get two people from two different divisions all around a water cooler or in the cafeteria or in the bathroom coming out or whatever it is, that incidental contact is where magic happens because it breaks the paradigm. And Capital Factory, shameless plug again, is great at that because you see so many people come and go.
Well, so we launched City DC, then we did San Francisco next. Well, we got, so here, we'll try to fast forward this, but
Six cities.
we did 6 cities, and we met somebody in San Francisco that said,
Oh, this
are
is
you guys
great.
tracking that Movil, which is the same idea of Ride
This
Scout?
is Neil Polk, right?
Yes, a Daimler company, Mercedes-Benz company, had the same idea. You know they're trying to come in to the United States. They're looking at expansion here, like ASAP. So
Oh, but remember, we played it cool. We're like, sure.
yeah,
Whatever.
we're
We
tracking.
do that, yeah. We got in the elevator and we're like,
So at that point, we had been going city by city in the launch, and then we changed the strategy, and we said pedal to the metal.
and the technology. We had to change the technology.
Right, to
too.
scare the crap out of the Daimler team. And so our marketing team now, which was awesome, came up with this idea the summer of '69. And so on June 9th, 6/9, we launched 69 new cities. Some more perfectly than others. But anyway, that was the big news. And then literally, they called us to, now we're out for Series A, we're raising money. We have a term sheet, and Daimler calls and said, we want to open up a discussion around acquisition. And then we started the journey with Daimler.
Yeah.
I won't tell the cubic story.
We have to.
Oh, you want me?
So
All right, are we
we're-
okay to tell that
we're-
story?
Oh, heck yeah.
I love that story.
Look, entrepreneurs are people. You have to understand the people behind it and what drives them to know where you personally and your story fit into your own journey.
Well, I think I should tell the cubic piece.
You cue it up, and then I'll finish it with a slam dunk.
So, all right, so we were about to have a signed LOI with Daimler, but there was another company that was interested in acquiring us, another big transportation company. So we fly down to San Diego to meet this company, and we're in the middle of the pitch, and Joseph has the phone up. Now we have it, it's working.
Live demo.
He's doing his thing, he's pitch.
By the way,
boom,
live
boom, boom.
demos are dangerous. Don't do it unless you are 100%
right.
confident or crazy. I was crazy.
So,
Live
in the
demo.
middle of the pitch, Joseph's showing it, and
On a big
his,
screen.
and his phone is up on the screen. It says Amy, and then in parentheses, wife, Copser. And Joseph's like, excuse me, gentlemen, like, decline the call. Anyway, you're going from point A to point B, and then Amy, wife, Copser calls again. And Joseph,
In
it's
our
a decline.
family, 2 calls means something is very
Yeah,
important.
something hot, right? All of us have that sort of.
But I was like, I'm really doing a pitch, so I had to hit her again with a decline. Burp. So anyway,
So, fast forward, the Germans come to Austin.
oh wait, no.
You're gonna
This is
fa-
what I'm insert.
All right, go ahead.
Insert. We leave this pitch, one of the biggest presentations we've ever done. We're in the car,
Oh, I was
in our
gonna-
rental car.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to?
No, go.
We're in the rental car, and Craig he seems like a nice enough guy, which he is, but he was a little bit, kind of ruffled under the feathers that in the middle of this pitch that my wife would call twice and kind of interrupt all. And he's like, he's rubbing the steering wheel, and he's like, what was so important? Have you spoken to Amy that she had to interrupt twice because she knew why we were here? I said, I don't know, I'll call her. So I put it on speakerphone because there's no secrets. And so Amy answers and she's like, hey. I'm like, hey, you called twice during the presentation. What was so important? She's like, we went over our data plan, $78. What have you been doing in California? I'm like, I'm sorry, babe. We've been doing these live demos and I didn't connect to the Wi-Fi and because it's easier to just, and then Craig right there, he just said, we are selling this company. we are selling this company. And again, I don't say that to dismiss the seriousness of the situation.
No, I do. I look back on that phone call because at that time, it was, we ended up, we can't disclose the price, but it was, it was about 8.5x our invested dollars. It was a good event for employees, investors, everybody. It was a win.
Yeah.
But
And my phone bill
but we
was a
could've-
win for the phone bill.
But it was like, do we keep going? This Grand Slam idea of aggregated transportation, and every company's still trying to get there. This is why you see Uber with scooters and bikes. It's all going back to sort of where we were with Ride Scout. But we had the discussion like this is not a never going to work again, but life-changing event for us. No more of those phone calls for Joseph.
Well,
And so
actually, I still get
he
those.
still gets those calls. Anyway, and so I'm actually grateful that Amy made that call that day, even though I was like, what is she doing calling in the middle? I'm grateful for that because it actually did trigger to say, Pigs and Hogs, company's a couple years old, we got this great exit, big brand, and let's go. And so, thank you, Amy.
Yeah, and not only, thank you, Amy, in case she's watching. But the purpose of these roundtables is you're getting into the capital factor, you're meeting founders, and as this is entitled, the founder story, you have to answer that question for yourself, not just at the beginning, but reevaluate it all through the journey. If you recall from the first part of the story, I did not set out on that back porch at Jason Dempsey's house to say, oh, I want to be a businessman, I want to make money, I want to be an entrepreneur. No, what I was saying was, my commute sucks, I want to find a better way to aggregate all the options and more efficiently using the aerospace engineer brain that I have to solve this problem. I was a problem solver. I did not set out for money or for fame or for greed. And so when we were faced with that situation where we had, you forgot there was a third option on the table down in Florida. They were playing footsies with us.
Well, we had the Series A.
Yeah.
We had a term sheet
Series
for Series A.
we had a potential investor, we had a lot of options, but the point is, upon reflection, we did not set out to do this for money or for greed, fortune, or fame. We did it to solve a problem.
No, I did it for the money.
Well, okay. But again, in a
Plus, I wanted
founder's,
to work with you. We
In
could have
a
done
fa-
whatever.
there
It
you go.
would have been whatever. It would have been whatever.
but in a founder's story, you have to make sure you're being true to yourself. And so for me, I was like, because there were people who were like, oh, you have 4 potential people on the hook for your company. Hold on to it. You could be like a whatever. All the stories you see in magazines and stories. But no, what I saw was an opportunity to take what we built, partner with a company like Mercedes-Benz, and take it to the next level. And oh, by the way, if we could pay off credit card debt and that data bill from our cell phone, then it's a win-win-win-win-win. And that's what it really became. So,
And it, one last note on the sale. So when we did have the meeting, we did have the walkaway moment. I'm like, we want this. They're like, we'll pay you this. And we said, well, we'll take this. And they said, well, we can pay this. And then we said, no deal. We literally walked out of the room and they'd flown.
picked
here
up
from
our
Germany.
briefcases,
We're
put
like,
our
no
folders
deal.
in there.
No deal. And then coming back to the Miller Lite, Joseph I think he received the text.
No,
from
I
the
said
other, or
it.
you sent
I
the
went all the
text-
way home.
You sent the text to the other CEO and said, let's have a beer at the Driscoll tonight. And then
Yeah.
Joseph called me and says, here's the number, here's the price. I'm like, all right, done, let's do it.
Yeah.
And so, and I used to joke that the idea of Joseph selling a company to Mercedes-Benz in Austin, Texas, I didn't want him to negotiate because he would have paid for that to happen.
Miller
As long as it
Lite for
includes
life.
Miller Lite. So I'm like, Joseph, don't just. And then he ends up at the end of the day having the beer at the Driscoll, negotiating the deal,
Yeah.
and got it done.
I mean, I like popular culture like probably most everybody in the room. I've said for years, I even wrote a paper that people will be what they can see. And so when you find yourself in a situation where you don't really know the next steps, what do you fall back on? You fall back on family, you fall back on mentors, you fall back on popular culture. And I channeled that moment in, and I'm not making this up, the movie Pretty Woman. If you remember, despite all the Julia Roberts and all the blitz and the bling of that movie, one of the final scenes is where Richard Gere asked everybody, all the lawyers and finance, just leave the room. And he said to the old shipping tycoon, what is it that you really want to do? And the guy says, I want to build ships. And that's what he did. So at the end of that movie, they found a way, that Richard Gere, with his financing, he found a way to buy the company and not tear it up and not fire all the people. And that was a beautiful story because they both found their own founder story. And so what I did was, upon leaving that negotiation in downtown Austin, where we picked up and left, because we didn't think at the time that they valued or respected enough what we built, and vice versa, sure. And so when I got back to the house with Amy, I basically just said no. I told her, we said no to the deal. And she said, well, is that what you really want? I said, well, what I really want is to partner with somebody who wants to solve the world's transportation problems. And I told her, I said, but the CEO, the guy across the table from me, Robert Henry, I said, I could see the whole time while the lawyers and the finance people were going at it, there was like a twinkle in his eye, like, if I can just get to him. And so there's a couch down at the Driscoll Hotel. You know how when you walk through the bar, there's like that long middle area and then you have the main area? Well, there's a couch that one day I'm gonna secretly put a plaque on the wall behind that couch, because the two of us just met, and I said when I sat down, I said, Robert, I know you're furious with me. You flew all the way over from Germany. We didn't close this deal, but just know this, that even if we're gonna be competitors in the future, we're both working towards the same goal of reducing transportation problems, helping people, improving quality of life. And so from there, let me buy you my favorite beer. And from there, we just sat around. Actually, I bought him a local beer. I bought him a Fireman's Ford. And we sat there and we just talked about life, the Army, because of all the Army that's in Germany, the fact that he grew up in Cold War Germany. He's a huge Beatles fan like I am. His youngest son is a Beatle freak like I am. Of course, he's 4 years old and I'm 48. But we just had the greatest conversation. And at the end of the night, I stood up to say, thank you very much. You know, I look forward to doing business with you or against you either way, but it's not personal, it's just professional. And that's when he put his arm on my shoulder and said, okay, come on. Surely we can find a deal. And that's what we did. We found a deal and great things have happened ever
All right,
since.
we got to wrap, and we
Oh,
kind of
wrap.
skipped through quick.
Okay.
I wanted to show, this was one thing I brought, an early logo where you look at it and you go, really? Really? How did we get there?
She was so inspired when she made that.
This was not ultimately the logo. I mean, it was a transportation grid. Anyway,
If you have to explain it, it didn't work.
this is more what the logo looked like, the Ride Scout logo. And I brought this because just for founders, this is the tombstone. This is essentially the trophy you get when you sell a company.
Isn't that what our
Yeah, and this you get this from your investment banker. So you'll see these around in VC offices and others and founders. So this is this is the prize, if you will. I mean, the money behind it. But you get one of these, so I wanted to display it. And that was September of 2014, and then we worked a couple more years for Daimler. And Ride Scout eventually, we merged two companies, Ride Scout and Globe Sherpa. And then we knew the day was coming. The Movil name dropped on top. Away went Ride Scout. Ride Scout is now inside of the Movil app. Still, it's not facing forward the way it was. And the team is growing. And then Mercedes just merged with BMW a week ago, which is like, whoa.
It's almost
So anyway,
like we were onto something.
Yeah.
So,
All right, well that's it for me.
yeah, we have to apologize. So he's got another thing to hop to. I'm actually meeting with somebody. We're about to build another company. So I've got to go meet with him. I didn't know it was going to quite run this long. But here's the good thing, especially if you live in Austin. We're here. We're both mentors of the Capital Factory. We're both in and around. We can answer all your questions. As of November 6th, the voters of Texas elected me to spend more time with my family and at the Capital Factory. So I'm available, just not necessarily this evening for this tonight. So thank you to
all
everyone for coming.
Yeah, appreciate it.
And we start a podcast after this. All right. And make sure you pass out business cards to your fellow friends that are here, or even friends that you don't have, to meet everybody that's here.
I'm Craig at MoonshotsCapital.com.
And I'm Joseph Gopser.
There you go. There's my
I don't even think we said our names together. We rolled right into it.
I'm
Anyway,
Craig.
He's Craig, I'm Joseph. Coming over for a hug. Thank you.
All right.
Appreciate it.
What's that? Oh, good. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, you got it.
I definitely need the training. I'm gonna figure it out.
MOOVEL. Something was in the background. Ready? Lucy, here we go. Perfect. Did you? Oh, here, we'll do a stage selfie, so we do a picture of the selfie. There we go. I'm walking out behind you.
There are other things, but.
We're gonna go meet
Hi, Ryan, what do you do? Where are you from?
Well, actually, I'm taking a class.
Okay, what, and you guys are.
Check out an event. So, Creation and Chris.
Okay.
Yeah, so, four of them. Wait, oh, I'm getting a MBA and master's.
Example, I like to
Yeah, yeah, so.
once you throw mentors in, all of a sudden,
Thank you.
that's because
What's your
in the
question?
short, we will so we're already on that hands-on learning. Every time I see it,
I know what they'll say in a school system or a teacher would, our students would subscribe, and then they get this creation break that comes in, and then. Right. Homeschoolers would be an ideal,
Yeah.
you know, you just people that want to enrich their education. And so they're like,
yeah.
I'm thinking, I was,
There are
son
things
is
to say.
27, that worked out. Another one that's a fireman now, but he was like, he created his ass, which didn't come out fire. Interesting.
It's a challenge.
Joseph.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, that's the big black things coming out. So I've read a little bit of it. That's for.
Yeah, so it looks like awesome startup.
Better in speeches and that sort of thing and being more. It's really not just about Mr.
Excuse me, is it okay? What the hell's going on?
Messages going on, so that's something non-verbal. So, we're trying to, well, we don't want this, but we're
Yeah,
trying
no, exactly.
No, we're not, no, we're not, but we came because Joseph was here and I've been wanting to connect us here.
No,
So what, how'd you, so what's your background?
I like to do science. So I came out of U of H.
Okay.
My other professors came from Rice. So they worked out in the Center for Computational Finance.
So started
We still work very closely with them over there. Two of my fellows finishing up their PhDs.
Presence since the 20s.
Okay, yeah.
Last. And she, a 2-hour thing that we're starting to do, about an hour afterwards, of just kind of focusing on you will see a little louder now. There's one, two, three,
Yeah.
four, five, six, maybe seven. The other pieces are,
Probably the fact that it's like,
here, and you asked me a
super
question.
hard to
Oh, yeah.
And I just gave the first part of the
can't,
answer.
like,
And then I swung way over here. The
That
second
may
part
have
of the
been part of,
answer.
there was something else, I forget what it was, but I know, you know, when I read on there, it wasn't a call to vote for what, I'm saying, because it was kind of like,
See how the difference it feels, and you go, oh, this way.
yeah, it's kind of as you get more
Okay,
power
even
to it,
everybody
like,
else
it
in
kind of.
yeah, each one was less and less and less, but it's like, you can't,
But if you
there's
look
a
at that
point where network marketing or whatever,
slipping way
get rid
out,
of all those
and
things.
you don't want like a this person,
But you just can't.
I'm not like it, because that's also.
Yeah, I mean, so it is sort of a balance.
The mind
And
is
then the
mind
third
and
thing
stuff
is
like
that
that.
there is a big.
Yeah, so there's scale
So you're
levels.
talking about, you have a-
Before it was actual marketing, now it's proof of
You can
stability.
show it.
You know, you get rid of a lot of the electricity costs and stuff. I mean, right now, Bitcoin is somewhere's, I mean, you know, because the market's gone down and stuff like that, so people have been turning off their PCs. and
So the
certain parts,
education
but,
system right now is.
It got easily the point
Okay,
of,
so my fingers.
How much is
are
it?
This is a minute.
it's,
Doing one
free.
swing motion.
How much was it
stop,
originally?
and I close.
Originally,
Back.
No, how much did it go up to?
it's
I'm
20
talking
gig.
about something
Right,
out
right,
there,
but
that
I'm
education
saying,
system.
but I'm saying,
Not
this
because
is
it's
physically
education
used,
system.
again, it's first one.
Even
Even
if
he
you
was
want
a
to-
little, yeah, exactly, the Diva Knievel was a little and everything, you know, he may not have done
Better,
that,
but it's.
but that's another
It's
story.
gonna be having.
You can name the certain.
So, if I tell you about human trade, so it's not like I
Don't make money.
And they tell in a
Yeah.
Coke bottle.
And that one right there, as I said,
It's
when
like
I read it, I
make them
went, oh,
see
shit.
it. I mean, they will just be riveted.
I mean, stuff when
It's
it
the brain
first comes
stop.
out. So what is your, what do you want to do? What's your?
They talk,
so
yeah,
it's
just,
simple.
and you wanna hold it. and just-
Yeah, so-
But
so
if I
words
say,
like
if I'm
Bitcoin,
teaching
like
you
Ethereum, all
chemistry,
that
you're
kind
blah,
of
blah, blah,
general
blah,
use
blah,
case.
if I don't know your system,
We just got some resolution of loans.
Right, they're there.
From developed countries to developing just tracking.
Well, you know what I do too, because it looks, like she said, like your brain is. Look, I'm doing coaching.
I know, Mike and I are laughing about that,
These
yes.
guys have a really
They,
cool product
obviously
called,
funding,
let's see if I
they
can
have,
get
you know, good returns on investment.
Creation
or
Crate,
have
so
a
Creation
use case,
Crate
a
is,
business plan.
as I understand, it's
They
gonna
just
be
literally
money
can't find
from
funding
the
in
state.
region.
So you would
Because,
subscribe
you know,
to
for
Creation Crate, you have
banks,
kids, you either have,
Well, everything-
kids at
everything-
home or you're teaching kids. And Creation Crate comes in, and it has stuff in there like.
Yeah, that's a big part of it, is everything's
Or
public, it's all
something where
transparent.
if you're learning chemistry,
I talked to,
you have an immediate,
I talked to,
you know, little fun thing, you
I will,
know, so it comes out, right? So it's
It's
just,
definitely
it's
gonna lot
just,
better
it's a
than
way to
these.
kind of
Well,
experiential.
but I was looking at it in the app, because I was looking at.
Hands-on, yeah.
I would like to see that product and stuff, so I'm out there.
You can tell me how to do something all day long.
So PayPal, to me PayPal was the only thing.
Yeah,
So this is a subscription, right, so you get something
I
monthly.
had Stripe, and I was using, well, I was using Stripe for charity, like, but I could use it twice, but I.
Was that like your online course?
Just in case,
Right, yes.
I source.
That's what you're doing.
And so the online is giving you backup if you're a parent or teacher,
Go there, go to the.
the package you just
So
delivered, like.
I called the one guy.
Going through the
Yeah, I like
project.
it.
Right.
And the process is still-
So you're giving them support.
You know,
Okay.
To the kid and the adult.
Or it's just, it's 3.5 per systems.
If the person using.
And I'm explaining it
Customers are happy.
because of the way it's transferred, there's gonna be drug runners and everything else trying to use the apps, and we're always finding ways to close up the gaps and everything else. So when you set it up, you gotta go through several different steps, and we have people like ourselves, you know what I'm saying, that, okay, we work with technology, and we get to you. And you got other people that just want it simple as possible. If I can't press three keys and make it work, I hate the system.
Makers.
And I'm
People
like,
that.
oh, now it makes sense, now I see why it's 3.5,
Justin down the
because
street from us,
it
he's
wasn't
way ahead of
clunky or
this.
anything going through it,
You're
but I had to
down
go
the
through a
street,
few
I just
steps.
gave a jukebox.
And as I went through it, and as he explained it to me, I'm like, yeah, I absolutely want it to be secure, and I completely understand because of,
So how
it
many
would be an obvious
creation
place to
crates
put
do you
one,
have,
you know,
developer?
where, you know, it's just like transferring over, you know, tires. You know, but gold and, or platinum, well, silver's a little bulky. So gold, I mean, you know, I carry in my pocket that much gold, it should be as much as I weigh in silver, so it's 50, 70, 75 pounds.
Stem subscription.
So that's
I've
the-
heard this term before, so it's progressive,
And
that's what it is.
okay, makes perfect sense, and I've used it, now a couple times it
Oh
doesn't,
my God,
it doesn't stand quite as easily as it would.
Stuff that I
That could be.
Science is stuff that I just totally ignore.
But it's-
Right. I just didn't get it.
So because the guy really knew his stuff, I was like, you're the, because I always find that person and I go back to that all the time.
Chris is from Toronto.
If I can.
Brian is
So,
from,
so
New
you want,
Jersey.
so.
Okay, so mine.
But what I don't quite
And they came
understand
down for,
is why are all these
talk to
people
investors.
motivated, because you have
Okay.
people watching the system, that makes it honest. Why are people motivated to watch the system? What is their
I don't know
payback?
that much about this.
I mean, I get the farms and everything else, but
Yeah.
not everybody wants to do that, and it's a, you know, it's an over.
We live here in Austin, Earl startups.
Yeah, because you know, one of the biggest things is businesses don't want to be transparent. Why would they want to be forced to use this when they have to be as transparent as?
Oh, yeah, no, obviously, I mean, it keeps people a lot more honest, it's like,
A great
it's like eating,
is
that's what I love
practice
about
telling
eating, is
somebody else.
because you get all these honest reviews, and
And
then
then have
it
them
forces people to be
Explain back to you
more
what your product is.